Right now, you may be sitting in a prison without walls. A prison built from old memories, past hurts, and words that wounded you years ago. The door is unlocked. It has always been unlocked. Yet something keeps you inside, convinced that these chains are part of who you are. The Buddha understood this strange human tendency. He saw how we cling to our suffering like a treasure, afraid to release what has become familiar, even when it causes us pain. Today, we will explore the ancient art of letting go. Not as a way of forgetting, but as a path to genuine freedom. You will discover that peace is not something you find. It is something you uncover when you finally set down what you have been carrying. Take a breath. Your liberation begins now. Part 1: Understanding Attachment and the Root of Suffering. 25 centuries ago, beneath the shade of a Bodhi tree, a young man named Siddhartha Gautama sat in deep meditation. After years of searching, after trying every path and practice known in his time, he finally saw the truth of human suffering with perfect clarity. What he discovered became the foundation of Buddhist teaching, the Four Noble Truths. And at the heart of these truths lies a profound insight about attachment. The Buddha taught that suffering, or dukkha in Pali, arises from clinging. We suffer not because life contains pain, but because we grasp at pleasure and push away pain. We suffer because we try to hold on to things that are constantly changing. We suffer because we want life to be different from how it is. This teaching is not pessimistic. It is actually deeply liberating. Because if suffering comes from clinging, then freedom comes from releasing that grip. Think about your own life for a moment. What are you holding on to? Perhaps it is a memory of how things used to be. Perhaps it is anger towards someone who hurt you. Perhaps it is regret over a choice you made. Perhaps it is a worry about what the future might bring. Whatever you are holding, notice how it feels in your body. Does your chest tighten? Do your shoulders rise? Does your breath become shallow? This is what attachment feels like. It is a contraction, a closing, a heaviness that we carry everywhere we go. There is a famous Zen story about two monks walking along a road. They came to a river where a young woman stood, unable to cross because of the strong current. Without hesitation, the older monk picked her up, carried her across the river, and set her down on the other side. The woman thanked him and went on her way. The two monks continued walking in silence. After several hours, the younger monk could no longer contain himself. "Brother," he said with frustration, "how could you carry that woman? You know we are not supposed to touch women. It is against our vows." The older monk smiled gently and replied, "I set her down hours ago by the river. Why are you still carrying her?" This simple story contains the essence of Buddhist wisdom about attachment. The older monk acted with compassion, completed the action, and moved on. The younger monk was still carrying the encounter in his mind, turning it over and over, unable to let it go. How often do we do this? How often do we carry conversations, encounters, and experiences long after they have ended? How often do we replay old hurts, old arguments, old disappointments in our minds? The Buddha called this the second arrow. He explained that when something painful happens, it is like being struck by an arrow. We cannot always avoid this first arrow. Life contains genuine difficulties and sorrows. But then we often shoot ourselves with a second arrow, the arrow of our mental reaction. We add layers of story, of judgment, of resistance, of "Why me?" And this second arrow often hurts more than the first. Letting go is learning to avoid the second arrow. It is learning to experience what happens without adding unnecessary suffering through our mental commentary and clinging. Part 2: The Sacred Practice of Releasing the Past. The past is a curious thing. It no longer exists anywhere except in our minds. The moments that once were real, the conversations, the experiences, the joys and sorrows, have dissolved like morning mist. They are gone, irretrievably gone. And yet, we live as though the past were still here. We carry it with us like a heavy suitcase, pulling out old memories again and again, examining them, reliving them, suffering over them as though they were happening right now. This is especially true of painful memories. The mind tends to return to what hurts, like a tongue that cannot stop touching a sore tooth. We replay old wounds. We remember harsh words spoken to us. We torture ourselves with regret over things we said or did, or things we wish we had said or done. But here is the truth that can set you free: the past cannot hurt you. Only your thoughts about the past can hurt you. And thoughts can be released. There is a Buddhist teaching called beginner's mind, the practice of meeting each moment as if for the first time, without the burden of accumulated conclusions and judgments. When we approach life with a beginner's mind, we are not weighed down by everything that came before. We are fresh, open, and available to what is actually happening now. This does not mean we forget our experiences or pretend they did not happen. Our past has shaped us, taught us, and made us who we are. But there is a difference between learning from the past and being imprisoned by it. Imagine you touched a hot stove as a child and burned your hand. That experience taught you something valuable. You learned to be careful around hot surfaces. This is wisdom. But if you spent every day for the rest of your life thinking about that burn, feeling the pain over and over, angry at the stove, angry at yourself, this would be suffering. The lesson was useful. The endless replaying is not. The Buddha told a story about a man who was shot by a poisoned arrow. His friends rushed to help him, wanting to remove the arrow and treat the wound. But the man refused their help. First, he said, "I need to know who shot this arrow. What is his name? What village is he from? What kind of bow did he use? What kind of wood was the arrow made from?" The Buddha pointed out that this man would pass away before getting all his questions answered. The wise thing to do was to remove the arrow first, to address the immediate situation, rather than getting lost in endless analysis of how it happened. Many of us spend our lives asking questions about our old arrows. Why did this happen to me? Who is to blame? What should have been different? And while we are asking, the poison continues to spread. The wise response is to remove the arrow, to let go, to heal, to move forward. Here is a practice you can try. Find a quiet place and close your eyes. Bring to mind something from your past that you have been carrying, some regret, some hurt, some old story that still causes you pain. Do not suppress it. Allow yourself to feel it fully for a moment. Now, take a deep breath and say silently to yourself, "This happened. I cannot change it. I release my grip on this memory. I allow it to rest in the past where it belongs." You may need to do this practice many times. Old patterns do not dissolve overnight. But each time you consciously choose to release, you weaken the hold that the past has on you. Each time, you create a little more space for peace. Part 3. Releasing expectations and the illusion of control. There is a story about a farmer whose horse ran away. His neighbors came to console him. "What terrible luck," they said. The farmer replied, "Maybe." The next day, the horse returned, bringing with it 3 wild horses. The neighbors came to celebrate. "What wonderful luck," they said. The farmer replied, "Maybe." The following day, the farmer's son tried to ride one of the wild horses and broke his leg. The neighbors came again to express their sympathy. "What terrible luck," they said. The farmer replied, "Maybe." Soon after, army officers came to the village to draft young men for war. Because of his broken leg, the farmer's son was not taken. The neighbors came once more. "What wonderful luck," they said. And the farmer replied, "Maybe." This old Taoist tale, often shared in Buddhist circles, points to something profound about our relationship with expectations and control. We spend so much of our lives trying to make things turn out a certain way. We have pictures in our minds of how things should be, how our relationships should look, how our careers should unfold, how our children should behave, how our bodies should feel. And when reality does not match these pictures, we suffer. But the truth is that we control far less than we imagine. Life is a river, constantly flowing, constantly changing direction in ways we cannot predict. We can swim in the river. We can choose our strokes. But we cannot control the current. The Buddha taught a concept called upadana, which means grasping or clinging. One of the most common forms of grasping is our attachment to how we think things should be. We create expectations, and then we suffer when life fails to meet them. This does not mean we should not have preferences or make plans. We can prefer health to illness, kindness to cruelty, peace to conflict. We can set goals and work toward them. But there is a difference between preference and demand, between intention and attachment. When we hold our preferences lightly, we remain flexible. We can adapt when circumstances change. We can find unexpected gifts in unexpected outcomes. We can maintain our peace regardless of what happens. But when we grip our expectations tightly, insisting that life must conform to our wishes, we set ourselves up for constant disappointment. We fight against reality. And as a wise teacher once said, when you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. Think about your own expectations. What are you demanding that life give you? What are you insisting should be different? What would it feel like to soften that insistence, to open your hands and allow life to unfold as it will? There is a beautiful practice called letting go into not knowing. It involves acknowledging that we do not know how things will turn out, and being at peace with that uncertainty. We do not know what tomorrow will bring. We do not know whether our plans will succeed. We do not know how long we will live or what challenges we will face. And in the face of this vast uncertainty, we can choose either anxiety or surrender. Surrender does not mean giving up. It means giving over. It means releasing our tight grip on outcomes and trusting in something larger than our limited perspective. If these words are resonating with your heart, I invite you to subscribe to Buddha Coha. Here, we explore ancient wisdom for modern lives, finding peace together on this path of awakening. Please take a moment to subscribe and share this message with someone who might need to hear it today. Part 4. The Liberation of Forgiveness. Of all the things we cling to, perhaps none is as heavy as resentment. When someone has hurt us, when we have been wronged, the mind wants to hold on to that injury. It wants to replay the offense, to nurture the anger, to keep the wound fresh. But the Buddha offered a different perspective. He said, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. This image is powerful because it reveals the truth about resentment. It hurts the one who holds it far more than the one it is directed toward. The person who wronged you may have moved on entirely, may not even remember the incident. But you are still carrying the hot coal, still burning your own hand. Forgiveness is the act of setting down that coal. It is the act of releasing the one who hurt you, not for their sake, but for yours. This is often misunderstood. Forgiveness does not mean that what happened was acceptable. It does not mean you must reconcile with the person or allow them back into your life. It does not mean you forget or pretend the harm did not occur. Forgiveness simply means you are no longer willing to carry the burden of resentment. It means you choose your own peace over the satisfaction of holding a grudge. It means you refuse to let someone who hurt you in the past continue to hurt you in the present through your own thoughts. There is a story from the Buddhist tradition about two prisoners of war who met many years after their release. One asked the other, "Have you forgiven our captors yet?" The second man replied angrily, "No. Never. I will never forgive them for what they did to us." The first man looked at him with compassion and said, "Then they still have you in prison. This is the prison of unforgiveness, a cell we construct ourselves, a captivity we choose by refusing to release those who have harmed us. The door is unlocked. We can walk out at any time. But we must be willing to leave our resentment behind. And perhaps even more difficult than forgiving others is forgiving ourselves. So many of us carry guilt and shame over our past mistakes. We torture ourselves with regret. We replay our failures and shortcomings. We hold ourselves to impossible standards and punish ourselves endlessly when we fall short. But the Buddha taught that all beings wish to be happy, and that our mistakes come from confusion, not from some fundamental flaw in our nature. We did what we did because of the conditions that existed at that time, our understanding, our emotional state, our circumstances. Given exactly those conditions, we could not have acted differently. This is not an excuse for harmful behavior. It is simply an acknowledgement of reality. And from this acknowledgement, self-compassion can arise. You are not the same person who made those mistakes. Every cell in your body has been replaced. Your understanding has grown. Your perspective has shifted. To continue punishing yourself for the actions of someone who no longer exists is a strange form of injustice. Here is a forgiveness practice from the Buddhist tradition. Find a quiet space and bring to mind someone you resent, perhaps for a small offense, to begin with. Hold them in your awareness and silently say, "For any harm you have caused me, intentionally or unintentionally, I forgive you. I release you. I set us both free." Then, bring to mind something you have done that causes you guilt or shame. Hold yourself with tenderness and say, "For any harm I have caused, intentionally or unintentionally, I forgive myself. I release myself. I am free to begin again." These words may feel empty at first. The heart may resist. But continue offering them, like medicine for a wound that has been open too long. In time, healing will come. Part 5. coming home to the present moment. All of our suffering about the past and future happens in one place, the present moment. Right now, right here, in this very instant, there is no past and no future. There is only this breath, this sensation, this awareness. When we let go of our mental stories about yesterday and tomorrow, something remarkable happens. We arrive. We land fully in the only moment that actually exists. And in this moment, we often discover that we are okay. Not perfect, perhaps, but okay. Breathing. Alive. Present. The Buddha emphasized present moment awareness throughout his teachings. He called it sati, mindfulness, or clear awareness of what is happening right now. This awareness is our refuge, our home, our place of peace. Think about the last time you were completely absorbed in something, watching a sunset, playing with a child, listening to music that moved you. In those moments, the mind stopped its endless commentary. The past and future fell away. You were simply present, simply alive, simply here. This is our natural state. The thinking mind, with all its worries and regrets, is like clouds passing across the sky of awareness. The clouds come and go, but the sky remains unchanged. Learning to identify with the sky rather than the clouds is the essence of spiritual practice. There is a Zen teaching that says, when walking, just walk. When eating, just eat. This sounds almost too simple. But how often do we actually do this? How often do we walk while lost in thought about something else? How often do we eat without tasting, talk without listening, live without being present? Letting go is ultimately about returning to presence. When we release our grip on past and future, our hands become free to receive this moment. When we stop carrying our heavy stones of regret and worry, we can finally feel the ground beneath our feet. Right now, as you receive these words, what is your experience? Not your thoughts about your experience, your direct experience. What do you see? What do you hear? What sensations are present in your body? This simple, direct awareness, is the fruit of letting go. It is not somewhere else, something to be achieved in the future. It is available now, always now, in this eternal present moment. Part 6. Walking the Path of Freedom. We have explored the many dimensions of letting go, releasing attachment, freeing ourselves from the past, softening our expectations, practicing forgiveness, and coming home to the present. But how do we actually walk this path in daily life? The Buddha taught that liberation is not a single dramatic event but a gradual process of awakening. We do not let go once and for all. We let go again and again, moment by moment, choice by choice. Each morning, we have an opportunity to release whatever we carried from the day before. Each evening, we can set down whatever accumulated during the day. Each breath is a chance to return to presence and let go of distraction. Here is a simple practice you can use throughout your day. Whenever you notice yourself caught in worry, regret, resentment, or any form of mental suffering, pause and take 3 conscious breaths. On each exhale, silently say the word release. Feel your shoulders drop, your jaw soften, your grip relax. Then return to whatever you were doing, a little lighter, a little freer. Over time, this practice becomes natural. The mind learns that it has a choice, that it does not have to hold on to every thought that arises, that it can observe thoughts and let them pass like leaves floating down a stream. There is a final story I wish to share. It is about an old woman who came to the Buddha carrying 2 heavy pots filled with water. She had been carrying these pots for many miles and was exhausted. The Buddha said to her, "Drop." The woman set down the pot in her left hand. The Buddha said again, "Drop." The woman set down the pot in her right hand. The Buddha said once more, "Drop." The woman was confused. "But I have already put down both pots," she said. The Buddha smiled gently. "Now drop yourself." This final letting go, the release of our fixed sense of self, of our identification with our stories and histories and opinions, is the deepest freedom of all. It is what the Buddha called nibbana, or liberation. We may not reach complete liberation in this lifetime, but every moment of genuine letting go is a taste of that freedom. Every time we release our grip, we touch the peace that is our true nature. Closing, the lightness of being free. We began this journey carrying heavy stones. We have explored why we pick them up, why we continue to carry them, and how we can finally set them down. The art of letting go is not about becoming empty or detached from life. It is about becoming available to joy, to love, to genuine connection. When our hands are no longer gripping the past, they are free to embrace the present. When our hearts are no longer closed in protection, they can open to the beauty that surrounds us. You have carried your burdens long enough. The regrets, the resentments, the old pains and disappointments, they have taught you what they came to teach. They do not need to be carried anymore. This does not mean that letting go is easy. Some stones have been with us so long that they feel like part of us. Some pain runs deep and needs time and tenderness to heal. Be patient with yourself. Be gentle. The path of release is not a race. But know this, freedom is possible. Not as some distant goal, but as a living reality available in each moment. Every time you choose presence over rumination, every time you choose forgiveness over resentment, every time you choose acceptance over resistance, you are walking the path of liberation. The Buddha himself, after his awakening, was asked, "What are you? Are you a god? A saint? A wizard?" He simply replied, "I am awake." This is your invitation, too. Not to become something extraordinary, but simply to wake up from the trance of clinging, the dream of suffering, the illusion that your peace depends on anything outside yourself. You are already free. You have simply forgotten. The work of letting go is really the work of remembering who you have always been beneath the accumulated weight of a lifetime. May you walk lightly on this earth. May you release what no longer serves you. May you find the peace that has been waiting in your heart all along. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of the art of letting go. If these teachings have touched you, I warmly invite you to subscribe to Buddha Coha and become part of our community of seekers. Together, we support each other on the path of awakening, sharing wisdom and finding peace. Please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment sharing what you are ready to let go of, and share this video with anyone who might benefit from its message. Your presence here matters, and together, we grow in freedom and understanding. Until we meet again, may you carry only what is necessary, release what is heavy, and discover the lightness of your own true nature. Be well. Be at peace. Be free.